Lee Min-ho, dressed in a crisp beige suit, sitting across from the host on a popular Korean talk show. The room glowed with warm studio lights, and the air carried that calm elegance only he could bring. But as the cameras rolled, fans noticed something. Something small, almost hidden beneath his sleeve. A thin, silver bracelet. Delicate, understated, and unmistakably familiar. Viewers who had followed his career closely knew that piece well. Because years ago, during the filming of The King, Eternal Monarch, Kim Go-eun was spotted wearing the exact same bracelet. A matching design, gifted by a stylist who had joked that it brings good luck to couples on screen. At the time, fans thought it was just a prop, something borrowed for a scene. But here, years later, Min-ho was still wearing it, even when he didn't have to. The host noticed too. Min-ho SSI, that's a very subtle accessory. You don't usually wear jewelry, right? He glanced down, smiled, and adjusted his sleeve, a small movement that almost seemed protective. Not usually, he replied. This one just feels right. The audience laughed softly, unaware of the storm those words were about to cause online. Within minutes of the interview airing, social media exploded. Clips were replayed frame by frame, screenshots zoomed in, comparisons made. Fans quickly unearthed an old behind-the-scenes photo. Kim Go-eun laughing, wearing the same style of bracelet during a break between scenes. And just like that, the connection was undeniable. It wasn't just the bracelet. It was the way he wore it. With quiet intention. Like a reminder, not of a scene, not of a show, but of someone. Because that's the thing about Lee Min-ho. He rarely makes loud gestures. His actions are subtle, meaningful, and deeply personal. When he keeps something, it's never by accident. As the interview continued, the host asked a question that shifted the mood. If you could describe your ideal partner in one word, what would it be? Min-ho paused, not out of hesitation, but reflection. He looked down for a brief moment, his fingers brushing against the bracelet. Then he smiled softly and said, "Comfort." That single word sent fans into an emotional spiral. Because in a 2020 interview, Kim Go-eun had used the exact same word to describe what love meant to her. She'd said, "Love feels like comfort, when you don't have to pretend." And now, years later, he'd echoed it, wearing the bracelet she once wore. Coincidence? Maybe. But to the millions who followed their story, it felt like something more. Like a quiet message spoken through time. Later in the show, the host brought up The King, Eternal Monarch, asking about his most memorable scene. He chuckled. "There's one," he said, "but it wasn't in the script." The audience leaned in. He continued. "We had finished filming for the day, but the director asked for one more take. Something spontaneous. It wasn't dramatic, just natural. And somehow it stayed in the final cut." He didn't mention which scene, but fans knew exactly what he meant. The soft smile he gave Kim Go-eun after the final kiss scene, the one that felt too real to be acting. When the segment ended, he reached for his water, and again the bracelet caught the light. Silver glinting softly. Not flashy, not staged. Just there. Like something he wasn't ready to let go of. Hours later, the internet turned into a digital detective board. Posts flooded Twitter, Instagram, and fan forums. Comparisons, side-by-sides, theories. It's the same one. Look at the clasp. He never wears jewelry except for that. He still remembers. Even stylists and former production staff joined the conversation anonymously. One wrote, "He never returned that bracelet. Said it was a lucky charm." But maybe it wasn't luck he was holding on to. Maybe it was memory. Because if you trace back through his appearances, the fan meetings, airport photos, even charity events, the bracelet shows up again and again. Always the same one. Always on his left wrist. Not hidden, but never flaunted either. Just quietly there. In a world where everything is temporary, this small piece of silver seemed to carry weight. It whispered of something that once existed between two people. Something gentle, private, and never fully explained. And perhaps that's why fans felt so moved. It wasn't just about romance. It was about sentiment. The kind that stays even when the cameras stop rolling. A few days after the interview aired, Kim Go-eun posted on her Instagram. A serene photo, sunlight streaming through her window, a book half open beside a cup of coffee. In the corner of the frame, barely visible, was her wrist. And around it, a delicate, familiar silver bracelet. She didn't caption the post. No emojis. No words. Just that image. And that was enough. The comments section exploded. They're both wearing it again. Same bracelet, same silence. This isn't coincidence, it's connection. But neither of them addressed the buzz. No denial. No explanation. Just silence, the kind that tells its own story. Because maybe some reminders aren't meant to be hidden. Maybe he kept the bracelet not as a symbol of the past, but as a quiet promise. That some bonds don't fade just because the spotlight moves on. For Lee Min-ho, it wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic confessions. It was about holding onto something small. A silver thread that still tied him in some quiet way to someone who once stood beside him under the same rain. And for those who've watched their story unfold, from their first shy smiles to the lingering glances no script could capture, this was one more moment that reminded everyone. Sometimes love doesn't end with words. It lingers in details, in choices, in bracelets. So maybe it's not about who said what, or what really happened between them. Maybe it's just about this. It started quietly. No headlines, no paparazzi alerts. Just a single rumor whispered among a few crew members. Lee Min-ho was here. No one believed it at first. Why would the global superstar with a packed filming schedule of his own suddenly appear on the set of Kim Go-eun's drama? Unannounced. But as the day unfolded, pieces began to fall into place. And what seemed like a rumor slowly became one of the most emotional sightings fans have ever witnessed. The set was wrapped in mist that morning. Soft rain brushing over the wooden paths of an old Hanok village. Kim Go-eun, dressed in a pale pink hanbok, rehearsed her lines with quiet focus. Her eyes, though serene, carried a hint of fatigue. It had been a long week of filming under changing weather and tight deadlines. When the director called for a break, she sat by herself beneath a cherry tree, sipping warm tea from a paper cup. That's when one of the crew whispered, "Someone's waiting outside the gate." At first, she didn't look up. The noise of rain on the umbrella drowned out the voice. But when she finally turned, her expression froze. Because standing beyond the monitors, in a simple cap and black coat, was Lee Min-ho. No entourage. No camera. Just him. Waiting quietly, holding an umbrella, the same shade of gray she once gifted him during the King, Eternal Monarch. People around began to notice. The murmurs spread quickly. But neither of them moved. For a few long seconds they just stood there, eyes locked as if time folded back on itself. He smiled first. That small, hesitant smile that fans knew all too well.